After the hospital, I was finally starting to get back on my feet. The mornings had grown quiet again, only the old clock on the wall marking time with its slow, steady tick. That afternoon, the mailman left a small stack of envelopes by the door. Most were the usual things: utility bills, a church bulletin, a catalog I had not asked for. But one envelope caught my attention. It was heavier, official-looking, with the bank's logo printed in dark blue at the corner. I sat down at the kitchen table and opened it without thinking. The letter began with a polite greeting and a sentence that made no sense at all. "We are confirming your loan in the amount of $42,300. For a long moment I just stared at it. My name. My address. Even my signature, neat, careful, exactly like mine. I read it again and again, hoping I had misunderstood. But the letter was clear. The loan existed. The papers were filed. The bank thanked me for my business. My hands began to tremble. I pressed the letter flat on the table to keep it from shaking. It smelled faintly of ink and paper dust. I checked the date: 3 weeks ago. I had been in recovery then, barely able to walk without help. I looked toward the framed photo on the counter, the one of my son Michael in his graduation gown. For a second the room seemed to tilt. My chest tightened. A strange chill crept up my arms, the kind that starts deep inside when your body knows a truth your mind refuses to accept. I read the letter one last time and whispered into the empty kitchen. How could this happen? The clock kept ticking. Nothing answered. But somewhere beneath the fear, a smaller feeling began to stir. Something I had not felt toward my son before. It was not anger, not yet. It was fear. Real human fear. Pause a second. Where are you watching from? And hit that like button if you've ever had to stay strong when family made you doubt yourself. That night I could not rest. The letter from the bank lay on the kitchen table like something breathing. Every time I closed my eyes, the same line burned behind my eyelids. Loan amount: $42,300. Signed by Marion Lewis. My name, my signature, my debt. I made tea, but the water went cold before I drank it. The refrigerator hummed. The clock ticked. I sat alone, trying to understand how such a thing could happen. I remembered March, before the surgery. Michael had been so careful then, kind, patient, almost tender in his concern. He brought me groceries, sorted my bills, said he would take care of the paperwork. He spoke as though numbers were too heavy for someone recovering. He had asked for my passport, my account book, the folder with my passwords. He wrote everything down neatly on a yellow pad. Checking, savings, insurance, even my small CD account. "It's easier if I link them," he said. I had nodded, grateful. I trusted him the way only a mother can, completely, without suspicion. Now those memories came back as warnings I had not heard in time. I went to the drawer where I kept my papers. It looked almost the same, almost. The folder labeled bank statements was missing 2 months. The small notebook where I recorded each withdrawal was gone. Even the rubber band that used to hold my receipts had been replaced with a newer one. Someone had been through everything, and that someone could only be him. I opened the utility binder. His handwriting was all over the pages, tidy, confident, claiming order where none should have been changed. Paid online. Auto draft set. Confirmed by email. I had never paid anything online. I sat back, feeling the truth slide into place like a lock clicking shut. The laptop on the counter was dusty. I turned it on and typed my old password. The screen blinked once and rejected it. I tried again. Another rejection. Then a message appeared. Security code sent to phone ending in 6492. My phone ends in 1174. His ends in 6492. I closed the laptop quietly, as if it were listening. My hands were shaking when I opened the small tin box where I kept loose papers, prescription slips, donation receipts, grocery notes. Near the bottom I found a crumpled receipt in Michael's handwriting. Visa gift card, $50. I remembered asking about it once. He said it was for my medication. I had never seen that card. Such a small lie, but lies rarely stay small. The night air pressed against the windows. I turned off the kitchen light and stood in the dark, listening to the house. Every sound felt altered. The floor creaked differently, the clock slower, the silence heavier. I looked at the calendar pinned by the door. March 18th. DocuSign forms. April 6th. Policy update. I had signed both. I could almost hear his voice. steady, patient, a voice built for reassurance. "It's just your consent, Mom. Don't worry." And I hadn't. That was the worst part, I hadn't. I sat at the table again and wrote everything I remembered on a sheet of lined paper. Dates, phone numbers, missing documents. My handwriting came out smaller than usual, each letter pressed into the page like proof. I needed to see it in front of me, not drifting around in my head like smoke. When I was finished, I looked at what I'd written. The page was full. I folded it once and slid it into the envelope with the bank letter. My hand stayed there for a moment, pressing down as if I could keep the past from spilling further. I thought of my husband. He had always said, "Money tells the truth if you learn how to read it." I had forgotten that. Maybe I hadn't wanted to know what it might say. At 5 in the morning, I stood by the sink, staring out at the first gray light. The trees were still wet from last night's rain. The world looked rinsed but not clean. I whispered, "Something isn't right," and heard my own voice steady for the first time in months. I wiped the table, straightened the papers, and laid out my cane by the door. I would go to the bank when it opened. I would ask for records, for signatures, for facts. Not to accuse, not yet, but to see. The house fell quiet again, but it was no longer the silence of loneliness. It was the silence that comes before a truth finally speaks. He came mid-morning the same way he always used to, no call, no warning, just the quick knock and the door opening on his own key. A paper bag of fruit swung from his hand. The smell of oranges arrived before he did. "Mom," he said brightly, as if the past night had not happened inside my kitchen. "How are you feeling? You look good." I did not answer right away. I took the bag, set it on the counter, and noticed the details my mind had started to collect without my permission. 6 oranges for apples, 1 bruised near the stem. A receipt folded twice and tucked under the bananas. The total was $14.28. He had rounded up for a charity at the register. His handwriting in the margin. "Drop off, Mom, 10:05 a.m. He saw the envelope on the table, the bank's blue logo facing up. He put on his gentle face, the one he used at Christmas when he wanted to leave early without helping with dishes. "What is this?" he asked, already pulling out a chair. "You tell me," I said, sliding it toward him. He skimmed the letter. He did not flinch. "System error," he said at once. "Happens all the time. Banks are sloppy. Their vendor messes up the e-sign portal and attaches the wrong account. I'll get it cleared." He said it like weather. Temporary. Predictable. I let the quiet collect between us. I watched the way his thumb touched the page. Flat, claiming, as if paper itself belonged to him. "Good," I said. "Clear it." "I will," he answered, meeting my eyes and smiling like a man who brings solutions. "I just need you to sign a couple of corrective forms so they can reverse it. 2 signatures, maybe 3. It is nothing." He laid his backpack on the chair and unzipped it. A folder appeared, sleek gray with a pen clipped inside. The pages were already flagged with bright tabs. He pushed them toward me. "This one acknowledges the mix-up. This one restores the original settings. This one authorizes me to speak to them on your behalf so you do not have to sit on hold for hours." I looked at the tabs without touching them. My hands stayed folded in my lap, fingers knit tight the way I used to pray when he had croup at 2 in the morning. "What original settings?" I asked. "You know," he said lightly, "the alerts, the online access. It is all exactly the same as before. I am just putting it back." I slid the top page a half-inch with one fingertip. Near the bottom, small print. "Consent to correct previously executed agreement." Another line. "Authorized phone. 6492. Below that, "Authorized email, Michael Lewis." He cleared his throat and placed the pen on the page, precise as a surgeon setting down a scalpel. "I do not sign anything while standing at the counter," I said. "Sit if you want to talk." He sat. The chair creaked the way it always has. For a moment I saw him at 14, legs too long for his body, sulking about algebra. Then the image was gone. He was a man again, careful and useful. "Mom," he said in that gentle, efficient tone. "I know this scared you. I hate that you are worried. I am fixing it. I just need you to trust me and sign where I have marked. Then I can drive to the branch and make this disappear before lunch." What if we read them together first? I said. He smiled without teeth. They are standard. You will not understand the jargon. That is why I am here. I read, I said. I said it plainly as if stating my age, 68. He leaned back. Okay, sure. Read. I began with the first page. He watched me the way people watch a pot they want to boil. I read aloud the parts that mattered. Corrective consent. Ratify. Prior authorization. I paused. This references a unique document ID. I tapped the string of letters and numbers. He was still. Where is the prior document you want me to ratify? It is the erroneous loan, he said quickly. That is what this corrects. It is dense, Mom. You do not need to. This says prior authorization agreement, not loan. My finger stayed on the line. Do you have that agreement here? He pushed air out through his nose. It is in the bank system. That is what they are fixing. If you sign, they will unlock the portal and I can show you everything. That is backwards, I said. He changed tactics. His voice softened. Mom, you were recovering in June. They must have pulled your information from an old profile and autofilled. This happens all the time. If you do not sign today, interest will accrue and they will start calling you. I am trying to prevent that. Interest has already accrued, I said. The letter shows the first cycle date. He did not look at the date. He kept his eyes on my face, like a man staring down a bridge he needs to cross before it lifts. You do not need that stress, he said. Let me do my job here. Your job, I repeated because the words had a taste. He reached, turn the stack. Fine, skip to this one. He tapped the second tab. This simply authorizes me to talk to them. I cannot clear anything without it. You can revoke it any time. I read the header. Durable Financial Agent Authorization, Limited Scope. The scope paragraph spilled 2/3 down the page. It covered more than the bank. It included associated vendors, third-party servicers, and any linked accounts. At the bottom, the signature line already had my name typed under it. The date line was filled in today. Why is the date already printed? I asked. It saves time, he said. I slid the page back across the table. He pushed it to me again, a little smile, a familiar nudge. You used my passwords, I said quietly. He laughed. I created them, Mom. You set the alerts to your phone. His smile stayed. To spare you. You changed the primary email. So I could handle support. You removed my statements. I sorted them. I made you a digital folder. You hate paper clutter. I never said that, I answered. I let the sentence hang flat. He cleared his throat. You are making this bigger than it is. We are on the same side. For whose account? I asked. Exasperation flashed then, quick as the glint on a blade. You are tired. Let me do this. I stood and reached for the fruit bag. I washed an apple and set it between us. Eat, I said. I will keep reading. He did not touch it. He looked at the pen instead, picked it up, clicked it once. I am trying to save your credit. By asking me to sign blind. That is not fair. He placed the pen on the tabbed line. A gesture as old as sales. You taught me to be practical. I taught you to tell the truth, I said. He laughed softly. This is the truth. It is a glitch. I called the bank this morning, I said. It was not quite true. I had not called yet. But I let the sentence stand. They will meet with me in person. I will bring these papers. Something moved behind his eyes. Surprise first, then calculation. He recovered. Great. Even better. I will go with you. You will not, I said. I will take notes. He leaned forward, lowering his voice, that careful, soothing tone. Mom, if you walk in there without me, you will be overwhelmed. They will use words you do not follow. You will sign the wrong thing. Let me carry this. That is why I set it up this way. The sentence landed like a small, deliberate shove. I heard myself breathe. I will make my own appointment, I said. Leave the documents. No, he said gently. They are secure. I will keep them until you are ready to sign. I looked at his hands. They were my father's hands, square, steady, useful. For a moment I wanted to say yes, To let the whole thing slide back into the old channel where mothers don't ask and sons don't answer. The urge passed. You will leave the documents, I repeated. Silence moved in, cool and patient. He sat back, looked at the window and then at me. You are being paranoid, he said, almost kindly. This recovery has been hard on you. I get it. I am not confused, I said. I did not say confused. You implied it. He opened his backpack a little wider, as if to gather the papers. I placed my hand flat on the stack. He did not try to move mine. Michael, I said, when did you first see the loan? He smiled again. 5 minutes ago when you showed me the letter. You signed for me in June, I said. Electronic signature. Document ID ending in 3K7. The bank letter lists it. I tapped the envelope. You cannot fix what you pretend not to know. He looked down at the pen. Click. Unclick. Click. He stood then, a friendly shrug. I am going to give you space, he said, like a man taking the high road no one asked him to take. Call me this afternoon and I will drive you to the branch. In the meantime, do not call them yourself. They will only confuse you. I already have an appointment, I said, keeping my voice even. Tomorrow. 9 o'clock. He blinked. Something tightened. With whom? Customer service. They will not show you anything, he said quickly. You need the fraud desk. I know the back-end department. I will keep the appointment, I said. He zipped the backpack. The zipper's metal teeth sounded louder than they should. He picked up the apple at last, turned it in his palm and set it down untouched. Mom, he said softly, one last try. You raised me to help you. I raised you to help, I said. Those are not the same thing. He looked at the gray folder, then at me. For a moment his face was an old map. Roads I used to know, cities we had visited, the lake where he learned to swim. Then the map folded. He smiled, the bright, public smile I had seen him use on strangers. Okay, he said. We will do it your way. But do not let them scare you. And do not sign anything without me. I will not, I said. He nodded, lifted his backpack and moved toward the door. At the threshold he paused and spoke over his shoulder, casual, almost tender. If they ask, tell them your phone ends in 6492, not 1174. It will be easier. They will find your file faster. He left before I answered. The door clicked shut. The house exhaled. I stayed at the table a long time. The pages were still under my hand, warm now. I lifted them and slid them into a fresh manila envelope I labeled with today's date. I wrote down the time he had arrived, 10:05 a.m. and the time he left, 10:47. I added requested signatures X3. Predated. Phone ending 6492. I added refused to leave without prompting. Attempted to keep documents. Then I washed the apple he had touched and ate it down to the core. The fruit was a little mealy, not sweet. Still I finished it. I wanted the simple proof of something completed and thrown away. I folded the bank letter once more and put it with the envelope by the door, next to my cane. Tomorrow at 9 I would sit in front of someone whose job was to name what had been done. I was afraid. I was steady. I was done pretending that a bruise near the stem is only a shadow. The morning air was cool when I stepped outside. My cane clicked against the walkway as I made my way toward the bank. The sun was still low, and the light felt fragile, like it could break if I breathed too hard. I had dressed carefully. A pressed blouse, my good coat, the one Michael gave me for my 65th birthday. I used to think of it as a gift of love. Now as I buttoned it, I wondered if it had been something else. A gesture of guilt, an early apology wrapped in wool. The branch opened at 9. I arrived at 8:45 and waited by the glass doors. The clerk inside recognized me from years ago. Good morning, Mrs. Lewis, she said as she unlocked the entrance. You're early. I need to review some of my accounts, I said. Something is wrong. She nodded politely and led me to her desk. Her nameplate read Jessica, Senior Account Specialist. She was young, maybe 30, with kind eyes that did not yet know how to hide discomfort. I handed her the envelope with the bank letter. She scanned it, typing quickly. Yes, Mrs. Lewis, I see the account. It was processed through our online portal on June 14th. The electronic signature matches the one linked to your customer profile. I was in the hospital that week, I said. I could not have signed anything. She hesitated, her fingers pausing on the keyboard. I understand. But it shows as verified, same address, same date of birth, same identification document uploaded. Which document? Your passport. That word hit me in the stomach. And where did it come from? Uploaded from a linked device. She turned the screen slightly toward me. It's encrypted, but the metadata shows the device used for verification. Would you like to see it? I nodded. She clicked through several layers, murmuring numbers under her breath. Finally, she said quietly, "It came from a phone number ending in 6492. For a moment the world tilted, not violently, but in that slow way a ship leans before it sinks. That is not my number, I said. She looked at me with sympathy. Mrs. Lewis, if someone used your information to obtain this loan, we will help you. I can file an internal review. But to begin the investigation, we'll need your written statement, and it has to include any family members with access to your documents." The word family made me feel cold. I sat very still, afraid my face would betray what my voice could not yet say. "I understand," I said. She printed the forms and handed me a pen. My hand trembled slightly as I wrote. I did not apply for or authorize this loan. My personal information was used without my consent. I added the phone number that was not mine and, after a long pause, the name of the person who had it, Michael Lewis. Jessica read it carefully, her professional calm never slipping, though I saw the flicker of pity in her eyes. She made a copy of my driver's license and slid it back across the desk. "You'll receive a confirmation email once the investigation starts. If the fraud is proven, the loan will be suspended immediately. Would you like printed evidence of the activity?" "Yes," I said. She returned a few minutes later with a stapled packet. It showed login times, device IDs, and 2 IP addresses. The last login before the loan was signed came from a location barely 4 miles from my house, near the hardware store Michael used to visit. I studied the numbers like scripture, tracing the dates with my finger. June 14th, June 16th, June 22nd, each one a visit I hadn't made. Could this be reversed? I asked. If it's confirmed as unauthorized, yes. But we need to verify the chain of access. I thanked her and gathered the papers slowly, careful not to fold or smudge them. They felt heavier than their weight should allow. Outside, the street was busy. Cars passed, children shouted near the crosswalk. Someone's dog barked at a squirrel. The world continued as if nothing had changed. But for me, everything had. I sat on the bench outside the bank and looked through the packet again. The numbers were cold, but they spoke clearly. My son had used my identity. He had stolen not just money but my trust, something no investigation could restore. I thought about how easily it had happened. A few signatures, a handful of documents. My faith in him filling every space he needed to cross the line. I had given him everything, my home, my passwords, my belief that love was proof enough. A gust of wind lifted the edge of one page. The printed timestamp caught my eye. June 14th, 3:27 p.m. I remembered that exact day. The nurse had been changing my bandages. I was half asleep, grateful that Michael had promised to pick up my mail. The same hour he was signing a loan in my name. My eyes stung but no tears came. I had cried enough over smaller things. Broken dishes, unpaid kindnesses, years of silence between phone calls. This was different. This was a clarity that left no room for crying. I placed the papers back into the envelope and closed it with a strip of tape from my purse. I pressed the seal flat, as if sealing a wound. Walking home, I noticed how every sound felt sharper. The rattle of a passing truck, the squeal of brakes, even my cane tapping against the pavement. The world was too loud, but my mind was quiet. Inside the house, I laid the envelope on the kitchen table beside my notebook. I wrote a single sentence under the date. "The truth is mine now." Then I sat down and waited for the fear to come. It did not. Only a kind of stillness, deep and strange, like the pause before a storm that you finally decide not to run from. The decision formed itself without drama. I would not hide. I would not beg. Tomorrow I would speak to someone who understood the law, not as family but as fact. The clock ticked once, then again, steady as breath. The air inside the house no longer felt heavy. It was waiting with me. He came the next evening just before sunset. I heard his car before I saw it, the familiar rumble of the old Honda I had helped him buy years ago. The sound rolled up the driveway like a storm returning to the same stretch of coast it had already destroyed once. I stayed by the window until he knocked. 3 sharp taps, then silence. For a moment I thought of pretending I wasn't home, but the truth no longer allowed me to hide. When I opened the door, he stepped in as if everything were normal, carrying a bag of groceries I hadn't asked for. "You didn't answer your phone," he said lightly, "so I thought I'd check on you." "Come in," I said, though the words came out flat. He set the bag on the counter. The smell of tomatoes and detergent filled the room. "I went by the bank," he began, his tone casual, rehearsed. "They said there was a misunderstanding, but it's being corrected. You don't have to worry about a thing." I said nothing. He looked around, eyes landing on the paper spread neatly on the table, the folder, the printouts, the letter, the evidence. His smile faltered just slightly. "What's all this?" he asked. "The investigation," I said quietly. "The one I started yesterday." He laughed, a short, nervous sound. "Mom, you didn't need to do that. I told you it's a glitch. These things happen. You'll just confuse them." "I spoke to the fraud department," I said. "They showed me the records. The loan was signed from your phone." For the first time, he didn't have a ready smile. His jaw tightened. "That's ridiculous," he said quickly. "They must have mixed it up." "They didn't," I said. "The system doesn't lie." He sighed, rubbing the bridge of his nose. "Mom, you've been under stress. You just got out of the hospital. Sometimes, after medication, people—" "Stop," I said sharply. The word cut through the room like a slap. "Do not finish that sentence." He froze. For a moment, the air between us thickened. I could almost hear his heartbeat in the silence. I took a step closer to the table. "You used my documents. My passport, my information, my signature. You took a loan in my name." He spread his hands. "I did it for us," he said quickly. "For repairs, for expenses. You said yourself the roof needed fixing, and I was going to pay it back, every penny." "That money never reached this house," I said. "The roof still leaks." He didn't answer. His eyes darted to the side, toward the papers, toward the door. "You don't understand how complicated things are," he said finally. "You think the bank will help you? They'll only make it worse." "Worse than theft?" I asked. My voice stayed steady, but my fingers curled around the edge of the table. "Worse than stealing from your own mother?" He slammed his hand against the counter, making the tomatoes roll. "I'm not a thief. I was trying to help." The anger in his voice echoed through the small kitchen. For years I had stepped back from moments like this, softened my words, smoothed the air. "Not this time." "Help," I repeated slowly. "You call this help?" He turned away, pacing. "You're blowing this out of proportion. I'm under a lot of pressure, Mom. You know that. The bills, Sienna's job, the baby, everything's on me." "You made choices," I said. "You didn't ask. You took." He rubbed his temples, his tone softening again. "If you just sign one more paper, we can close this loan and transfer it properly. I already spoke to the bank manager. He said it's just a matter of formality." He reached into his jacket and pulled out another document, folded twice. He set it on the table like a peace offering. "Sign it, Mom," he said. "Please. It's the only way to fix this." I looked at the paper but didn't touch it. "I'm not signing anything." His face darkened. "You don't know what you're doing. They'll freeze your accounts. They could even take the house." "This house is in my name," I said evenly. "And my accounts are secure. I spoke to a lawyer." The word lawyer landed like a blow. His expression changed completely. Anger first, then fear, then disbelief. "You what?" "Mr. Lawrence," I said. "He's from my church. He's retired, but he still handles legal matters for seniors. He's reviewing everything." He stared at me as if I'd betrayed him. "You brought a stranger into this?" "I brought the truth into it," I said. He shook his head, his voice trembling with restrained rage. "You'd really do this to your own son? You already did it to your mother." He stepped closer, his voice low now, almost a whisper. You don't know how much I've done for you. You'd be lost without me." "I was lost," I said softly. "But not anymore." The silence after that was heavy. The sun had dipped low enough to turn the walls gold, but the space between us felt cold. He picked up the paper and shoved it back into his jacket. "You're making a mistake," he said. "No," I said. "I'm finally correcting one." He stared at me for a long moment, then turned toward the door. "You'll regret this," he muttered. "I already have," I said. When the door closed behind him, I stayed where I was. The room smelled faintly of fruit and dust, of anger and something ending. I sat at the table and let the quiet settle. My hands were trembling, but not from fear. It was the release of something long held, years of habit, of silence, of letting him lead while I paid the cost. I folded the printouts, the letter, and the signed statement into a new folder labeled Evidence. Then I wrote one sentence on the cover, in a slow, deliberate hand, to be used if he returns. The last light faded from the window. Outside, his car idled for a moment before pulling away. I listened until the sound was gone. For the first time in months, maybe years, the house was completely mine again. The air felt steady. The silence no longer hurt. I sat back and whispered into the stillness. No more signatures. No more lies. And the quiet at last felt like agreement. A week passed before I heard from Mr. Lawrence. He called early in the morning, his voice calm and measured. The kind of tone that carries news you already suspect but still need to hear from someone else. "Mary Ann," he said, "I have the report from the bank's internal audit. You should come by this afternoon. It's better if we go through it together." I agreed, though part of me already knew what those papers would show. I dressed carefully, choosing a plain skirt and the same coat I had worn to the bank. My reflection in the mirror looked steadier now, older, yes, but solid. The kind of woman who can read her own name in a legal document and not look away. When I arrived at his small office, a converted room behind the church, the smell of old paper and lemon polish filled the air. Mr. Lawrence stood to greet me. His hair had turned almost white since I last saw him, but his eyes were still sharp. On his desk lay a single folder, thick with printouts and notes. He motioned for me to sit. "I went over everything," he said quietly, "and I need you to understand that what I'm about to show you isn't speculation. It's documented fact." He opened the folder and turned the pages one by one. Each sheet bore the same heading: Fraudulent Activity Review. Case number 7431. "Here," he said, pointing with a pen. "This is the transaction log. It records the exact moment the loan was signed electronically. June 14th, 3:27 p.m. I nodded. I had seen that number before. "This line," he continued, "shows the device used. An iPhone registered to the number ending in 6492. And this one shows the IP address. The location matches your son's home address." He looked up at me, waiting for a reaction, but my voice when it came was steady. "I see." He turned another page. They also confirmed the digital certificate. It contains his full name, automatically embedded when he logged in through the shared authorization link. Whoever processed the document didn't even try to hide it. He signed it himself. The words settled slowly, heavy but unsurprising. He paused, watching me. "We can take this to the authorities, Mary Ann. You have more than enough evidence for a criminal complaint. But it's your decision." For a long time I said nothing. I just stared at the pages, at the strings of numbers and names that reduced betrayal to lines of data. "I don't want revenge," I said finally. "I just want it stopped." He nodded, understanding. "The bank can nullify the loan once the fraud is confirmed. That part is simple. But I suggest one more step. A controlled meeting. Let him see the evidence. Let the truth come out in front of witnesses." I thought about that. The idea of facing Michael made my stomach twist, but hiding from him felt worse. "Yes," I said. "Arrange it. Let the bank hear him say it himself." Mr. Lawrence folded the report carefully into a clean envelope and handed it to me. "Bring this with you on Monday. 10 o'clock at the branch. I'll be there, and so will the manager." I thanked him, and as I stepped outside, the air smelled of rain again, the same scent that had filled the morning I first went to the bank. It felt as if the world was circling back to the same point, But this time I was not afraid. At home, I placed the envelope in the center of the table. I sat across from it for a long time, watching the paper lie still, silent, undeniable. I thought of all the times I had excused his behavior. The small lies, the missing receipts, the charm he used to cover mistakes. I had told myself he was tired, overworked, misunderstood. Mothers invent soft reasons to protect their children. But truth has its own voice, and once it speaks, you cannot pretend not to hear it. That evening the phone rang. His name lit up the screen. For a moment I almost didn't answer. But curiosity won. "Mom," he said, his voice careful. "I heard you've been talking to the bank." "Yes," I said. "I have. What did they tell you?" "That you took out a loan in my name." He laughed softly, but there was no warmth in it. "You're being manipulated. Banks make mistakes all the time. They just want to cover their tracks. Who's filling your head with this nonsense? That lawyer?" "He has documents," I said. "Your phone number. Your signature. Your address." Silence. Then a sharp exhale. "You don't understand how any of this works. Those records can be faked." "Then come to the meeting on Monday," I said. "At the bank. 10 o'clock. We'll see what's fake." He hesitated. "A meeting?" "Yes. You, me, Mr. Lawrence, and the branch manager. It's time to settle this properly." His voice turned softer, almost pleading. "Mom, please. Don't do this. We can fix it ourselves. There's no reason to drag strangers into it." "I tried to fix it quietly," I said. "You didn't stop. Now it will be done properly." He went quiet again, then sighed. "You're making a mistake." "I've already made one," I said. "Now I'm correcting it." When the call ended, I sat for a while, listening to the faint hum of the refrigerator. The house felt calm, not empty. I walked to the window and looked at the street. A single light flickered in the neighbor's yard. The world went on unchanged. I placed the phone beside the envelope and wrote a note in my notebook. "Meeting Monday, 10 a.m. Evidence ready. Do not let him speak over you. Let the facts speak first." The handwriting was clear, even. I underlined one line 3 times. "Stay calm." Then I brewed a cup of tea and sat quietly at the table until the clock struck 9. The house was peaceful, the way a courtroom must feel before the doors open. Still, expectant, waiting for the truth to take its seat. The meeting was set for Monday at 10 o'clock. I arrived 15 minutes early. The bank smelled faintly of toner and carpet cleaner. The same sterile calm I had always trusted. Behind the counter, clerks greeted regular clients, smiled mechanically, and whispered in low voices. None of them knew that today, at one small table in the manager's office, a family would come apart. Mr. Lawrence was already there. He stood when he saw me, his gray suit pressed, his folder under one arm. "You're right on time," he said quietly. "They've arranged for privacy. The manager is neutral, just here to record." I nodded, my heart steady but my palms damp. At 9:58 Michael arrived. He walked in with the same confident stride he had always used. Head high, expression calm. The air of someone ready to solve a problem that did not really exist. He shook Mr. Lawrence's hand, then turned to me. "Mom," he said, "I'm glad you agreed to this. We can end this nonsense before it gets out of hand." "Sit down," I said softly. "Let's hear the truth." The branch manager, a woman named Ms. Hayes, joined us with a thick binder of printed documents. Her tone was professional, her words careful. "Thank you all for coming. We're here to review the loan associated with Mrs. Marion Lewis. Mr. Michael Lewis, you are listed as the verified digital proxy on the application." Michael smiled politely. "That's incorrect. There must be an error." Ms. Hayes opened the binder. "We have the digital transaction record. The authorization was completed on June 14 at 3:27 p.m. The device used was registered to your phone number ending in 6492. The document includes a verified IP address from your home network. Would you like to review it?" His smile didn't falter, but his eyes narrowed. "That doesn't mean anything. The system must have pulled data from my phone when I helped my mother set up her account months ago." Mr. Lawrence spoke calmly. "The metadata includes your login credentials, Mr. Lewis. You signed into your own account before signing hers. Michael opened his mouth, but Miss Hayes continued. We also have the voice recording from the verification call placed that same day. The system automatically records all confirmations. She pressed a key on her computer. A few seconds later, the room filled with sound, the faint static of a phone line, a woman's voice reading terms of agreement, and then a man answering clearly. Yes, I confirm. Name Michael Lewis. Acting on behalf of my mother, Marian Lewis. She's unable to complete the process herself. The voice was unmistakable. His voice. The sound ended. Silence followed, thick and complete. He looked at me then, a flash of panic in his eyes before he caught himself. That doesn't prove anything, he said quickly. I was helping you. You told me to. I was in the hospital that week, I said. Recovering from surgery. I couldn't even hold a pen. His lips parted then closed again. For the first time he had no words ready. Miss Hayes cleared her throat. Mr. Lewis, based on our review, this transaction was unauthorized. The bank will annul the loan and remove all associated records from Mrs. Lewis's profile. You'll receive a formal notice regarding the fraudulent activity. He stood suddenly, the chair scraping against the floor. You can't just accuse me like this. You think you know what it's like to support a family? You think she ever helped me when I needed it? I didn't move. I watched him pace, his voice rising. I did it for both of us. He shouted. You don't even use your money, Mom. You sit in that house hoarding it while I'm trying to build a life. The words spilled out too fast for him to stop them. Mr. Lawrence raised a hand calmly. Mr. Lewis, the meeting is being recorded. I advise you to lower your voice. But he couldn't. The pretense was gone. His tone cracked between anger and desperation. I was fixing things. You've never trusted me, never believed I could handle anything on my own. I folded my hands on the table. Trust isn't given, I said. It's earned. And you spent mine. For a long moment no one spoke. The only sound was the quiet hum of the air conditioning. Michael sank back into his chair, staring at the floor. Miss Hayes finished typing a note, then looked up. The matter is settled. Mrs. Lewis, you'll receive written confirmation of the reversal within 10 business days. Mr. Lewis, we'll contact you regarding the remaining investigation. He nodded without looking at anyone. His shoulders were tight, his jaw clenched, his confidence gone. Mr. Lawrence gathered the papers and slid them into his briefcase. It's done, he said softly. Let's go. I stood slowly. My legs felt heavy but my heart was calm. Michael still sat there, staring at the empty space on the table where the binder had been. At the door I paused. You said you did it for both of us, I said quietly. You were wrong. You did it for yourself. He didn't answer. I left him there, surrounded by the silence he had created. Outside, the sunlight felt almost unreal. I walked carefully down the steps, my cane steady, the air bright and sharp in my lungs. Mr. Lawrence walked beside me but said nothing until we reached the parking lot. You handled that with more grace than most would, he said. I wasn't angry, I told him. Just done. He nodded. That's strength. We shook hands and he drove away. I stood by my car for a long time, letting the wind lift my hair and the noise of the city wash over me. Somewhere behind me, my son was still sitting in that cold, quiet office, surrounded by the evidence of what he had done. For the first time in months, maybe in years, I felt safe. Not happy. Not victorious. Just safe, the way a locked door feels when you finally turn the bolt from the inside. I got in the car and started the engine. The rearview mirror caught my reflection, lined but calm. The truth had been spoken, recorded, witnessed. There was no taking it back. I drove home slowly, windows down, letting the air move through the car. The sound of it filled the space where his voice used to live. The house was quiet again. The kind of quiet that does not threaten but settles like dust after a long storm. A week had passed since the meeting at the bank. The official letter arrived yesterday. Loan annulled. Account restored. Investigation closed. I read it twice, then folded it neatly and placed it in the file marked resolved. This morning I opened all the windows. The air was soft, smelling faintly of rain and lilac. I brewed a pot of lavender tea, the same kind my husband used to make on slow Sundays, and carried the cup to the porch. The wood was warm under my bare feet. The neighborhood was waking, birds calling, a child's laughter drifting from down the street, someone mowing early, as people do when life is ordinary again. I watched the steam rise from the tea and thought of how the months had unfolded. The hospital, the letter, the confrontation, the truth. It felt almost like someone else's story now, something I had read rather than lived. But my body remembered. The ache in my chest when I saw the first bank letter, the silence after Michael's voice broke in the office, the way his words, "I did it for both of us," had fallen flat against the evidence. He hadn't called since. At first I waited for an apology or even an explanation. Then I stopped waiting. The absence was cleaner than his voice had ever been. It allowed me to think, to breathe, to reclaim what had been mine long before the signatures and lies. I have learned new habits. Each morning I check my accounts online, print my own statements, keep them in folders labeled by month. I set alerts to my own phone. I keep my passwords written in a small notebook that stays in the drawer beside my bed. Control has its own kind of peace. It does not heal the wound, but it keeps it from reopening. Sometimes when the phone rings, I still expect his number. Sometimes it is only telemarketers or church reminders. His silence stretches across the weeks like a long road I no longer need to travel. His son, my grandson, comes by every few days bringing pastries from the bakery near the corner. He does not speak of his father, and I do not ask. We plant herbs together in the small garden behind the porch. Last week we added lavender. "It smells like calm," he said. He is right. The truth has settled into my life the way tea seeps into water. Slowly, quietly, changing everything it touches. I no longer tremble when I open the mail. I no longer flinch when I see the bank's blue logo. I no longer feel afraid of silence. Some evenings when the light begins to fade, I sit by the window and watch the reflection of the house across the street. The woman who lives there waves sometimes. I wave back. It's a small thing, but it feels like a promise that life continues, that trust, once broken, can rebuild itself in quiet ways. Through simple gestures, through order, through truth. I still keep one folder on the shelf labeled evidence. Inside are the bank letters, the printed emails, the signed report, and the statement with Michael's words typed at the bottom. Yes, I did it. I took the loan. I keep them not as weapons but as reminders. Proof that I am not crazy, not forgetful, not the foolish woman he tried to make me believe I was. The papers sit there like stones at the edge of a path. Markers of where I stopped and turned back toward myself. This afternoon I made extra tea and poured a second cup out on the porch railing. A small private gesture. One cup for the past, one for the peace that followed. I watched the steam drift upward, dissolve and disappear. I whispered, "You will not take more from me than you already have," and felt the words settle, heavy and certain. When the sun dipped lower, I went inside and closed the windows. The smell of lavender lingered. I set my cup in the sink, wiped the counter and looked around the kitchen. The house was mine again in every sense of the word. Mine in name, mine in order, mine in quiet. Before bed, I opened my notebook and wrote the date at the top of a fresh page. Under it I wrote a single line, peace restored. Boundaries kept. Then I placed the pen beside the cup and turned off the light. Through the open curtain I could see the garden, the small patch of lavender bending in the evening breeze, the color soft and steady. The world was ordinary again. And in that ordinariness I found something that felt almost sacred.